most people go through life chained by the thoughts and opinions of others. They wake up in the morning, and before even stepping out of bed, their minds are already filled with questions like, what will they think of me if I do this? Or will they approve if I take that step? This constant pursuit of validation becomes a silent prison. But the truth is, clear opinions don't define worth. No amount of praise makes you more valuable, and no amount of criticism makes you less. Your worth is something you carry inside you, something untouchable, something that cannot be granted or removed by the shifting voices of the crowd. Where the challenge is that from childhood, society trains us to chase approval. We learn to look for gold stars, for applause, for nods of acceptance. Encouragement is not wrong, but the danger lies in becoming addicted to it, in letting it become the foundation of how we see ourselves. When you depend on approval for your identity, you hand over the keys to your self-worth. You allow other people, who often don't fully understand your journey, your struggles, or your dreams, to decide what you're worth. And once you do that, you're no longer living free. You're performing for the crowd before waiting for them to clap so you can feel whole. But opinions are fickle. They shift with moods, with trends, with jealousy, with misunderstanding. One day people admire your courage. The next, they call it arrogance. One day they celebrate your progress. The next, they criticize your choices. For if your sense of worth rises and falls with these waves, then you'll spend your life exhausted, never grounded, never stable, never sure of who you are. The truth is, no one can measure your worth because they haven't walked your path. They don't know the battles you fought in silence, for the nights you've endured in pain, or the mountains you've climbed just to stand where you are today. Only you know that, and only you have the right to decide what that means. A woman unshaken by opinions understands this with clarity. She is not blind to feedback, but she refuses to let the voices around her dictate her identity. She listens, but she filters. She takes what helps her grow and discards what is meant to tear her down. She knows that her value is not up for negotiation and cannot be debated at a table of outsiders. Her worth is a foundation, not a currency. For it does not rise with applause, and it does not fall with criticism. It is steady, constant, unchanging, like a diamond that remains precious regardless of who recognizes its brilliance. When she faces judgment, she doesn't retreat into fear. She reminds herself that judgment often says more about the person speaking than the one being judged. When she faces doubt, she doesn't internalize it as truth. She reminds herself that doubt is an opinion, not a fact. And when the crowd grows loud with noise, she grows even louder in conviction, because she understands that real strength comes from knowing who you are, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. This is the freedom of living unshaken by opinions. It's the freedom to pursue your goals without waiting for permission, the freedom to stand tall when the world questions your path, and the freedom to stay grounded when both praise and criticism try to sway you. Because in the end, the only opinion that truly matters is the one you hold when you look in the mirror. And when you see yourself with clarity, when you know your worth is unshakable, no outside voice can take that away. That is the power of remembering that opinions don't define worth. It is the power to live boldly, to dream freely, and to remain unbroken no matter what anyone says. The moment you decide to rise above average, the world will notice. And when the world notices, it doesn't always clap for you. In fact, the louder your steps toward greatness, the louder the criticism becomes. That is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are moving. Greatness attracts criticism the way light attracts shadows. You cannot separate the two. If you want to do something meaningful, if you want to build something extraordinary, you must accept that criticism will walk beside you every step of the way. The truth is, people are often uncomfortable when they see someone breaking free from limits. Your ambition threatens their excuses. Your progress reminds them of their stagnation before. So instead of cheering for you, they criticize you, not because you are wrong, but because your growth shines a light on the parts of their lives they are afraid to confront. That is why ordinary effort rarely gets criticized, because it doesn't challenge anyone. But the moment you dare to think bigger, to dream louder, and to act bolder, you become a target. History proves this over and over again. Every person who has achieved something remarkable has faced relentless criticism. For leaders, creators, innovators, they were all doubted, mocked, and ridiculed before they were celebrated. People called them unrealistic, crazy, arrogant, before or impossible dreamers. But the reason their stories are remembered is not because the world accepted them in the beginning, or it's because they kept moving forward despite the resistance. Greatness requires a spine strong enough to carry not just the weight of your vision, but also the weight of people's opinions. Criticism is not the enemy, it's a signal. It tells you that you are doing something that matters. If no one talks before, it means you are not making waves. If no one notices, it means you are still hidden in the crowd. So when the criticism comes, instead of shrinking back, lean in. 4, recognize it as a sign that you are on the right track. Every harsh word, every skeptical glance, 4, every attempt to pull you down is proof that you are rising high enough to be seen. But here is the key. How you handle criticism determines whether it becomes your downfall or your fuel. Weakness takes criticism personally. 4, strength turns it into power. The woman unshaken by opinions understands that criticism is inevitable, so she chooses her response before. She does not waste time fighting every opinion or defending herself against every voice. She learns to filter. If there is truth in the criticism, she takes it. 4, sharpens herself and grows stronger. If it is empty noise, she lets it pass without a second thought. This discipline allows her to keep moving while others waste their lives seeking approval. To chase greatness is to accept loneliness. The higher you climb, 4, the fewer people will understand your path, and the fewer people understand, the more criticism you will hear. But loneliness is not weakness. 4, is the price of leadership, the cost of vision, the proof of courage. Only those willing to be misunderstood for long enough ever change anything in the end. So when the voices rise against you, don't ask, why me? Instead ask, before, why not me? Why shouldn't you be the one to endure the criticism and still move forward? 4, why shouldn't you be the example of someone who refused to bend under pressure? The world does not remember those who played it safe to avoid judgment. It remembers those who were criticized, doubted, even hated, yet kept building until the results spoke louder than the voices. Greatness attracts criticism, and that is the way it should be. If you cannot bear it, you cannot carry greatness. But if you welcome it, if you endure it, if you rise above it, 4, then you will not only achieve your vision, you will inspire countless others to chase theirs. Because nothing silences criticism more powerfully than undeniable success. There comes a point in life when you realize that chasing validation is a race you can never win. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you achieve, there will always be someone who thinks you are not enough, not qualified, or not worthy. If your confidence is built on their approval, you will spend your life adjusting yourself like a puppet pulled by invisible strings. That is why self-belief is more powerful than validation. For validation is temporary, but self-belief is permanent. Validation is borrowed, but self-belief is owned. When you believe in yourself, you stop asking for permission to exist. You stop waiting for someone else to clap before you take action. Before, you begin to move with clarity because your direction comes from within, not from the noise of the crowd. And the truth is, the crowd is inconsistent. Before, one day they cheer you on, the next day they laugh at you. One day they tell you that you are doing something incredible, for the next day they tell you it's impossible. If you depend on that cycle for your confidence, you will always feel like you are walking on unstable ground. Before, self-belief, however, builds a foundation under your feet. It tells you that even when no one notices, even when no one agrees, even when no one supports you, or you are still capable. It gives you the courage to take risks, to stand up after failures, and to keep moving forward when the world is silent. Self-belief whispers in your ear when the room goes quiet. It reminds you that your worth is not measured by applause, and your destiny is not determined by opinion polls. It is not arrogance to believe in yourself. It is responsibility. Because if you don't believe in your vision, who else will? People only start believing in you once you've already proven them wrong. They don't clap for the seed. They clap for the tree. But the seed only becomes a tree because it believed in its own potential long before anyone else saw it. That's the power of self-belief. It keeps you moving long enough for the results to show up. Validation feels good, but it is fleeting. Self-belief feels steady and it grows stronger with every challenge you overcome. Think about it. Every great inventor, leader, or trailblazer in history faced opposition. People doubted them, ridiculed them, even tried to stop them. But they pressed forward not because the world encouraged them, 4, but because they had a conviction inside that was louder than the outside voices. If they had waited for universal approval, nothing great would ever been built. 4, the danger of relying on validation is that it makes you forget who you are. You start bending, adjusting, and reshaping yourself to fit what others want. 4, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back. Self-belief protects you from that trap. It anchors you to your truth. 4, reminding you that your value doesn't come from fitting in, but from standing out. At the end of the day, validation is like chasing shadows. You can see it, you can run after it, but you will never hold it. Self-belief, on the other hand, is like the sun. It shines from within, and once it's there, no shadow can overpower it. That is why the woman who chooses self-belief over validation is unshakable. She doesn't crumble when people disapprove. Before, she doesn't shrink when people criticize. She walks her path with strength, knowing that the only approval she truly needs is her own. And with that mindset, before, there is nothing she cannot achieve. True strength doesn't come from how loud you speak, how confident you look, or even how much you achieve. For true strength comes from stability in identity. When you know who you are at the core, you stop living at the mercy of the world around you. Most people bend and break because they don't have a solid foundation. Their identity shifts depending on who they're with, what room they're in before, or what someone else thinks of them. But stability in identity means you're the same person in private that you are in public. Before, it means you've built yourself on principles, not popularity. The reason this matters so much is because life is full of noise. There will always be people who try to define you, limit you, or tell you what you can and can't do. If you don't have stability in your identity, you'll spend your whole life being pulled in different directions, trying to please everyone, but never finding peace yourself. Stability keeps you grounded. It allows you to stand firm when opinions, circumstances, and seasons of life change. Without it, you'll be tossed around like a ship without an anchor. Controlled by the waves of other people's voices, a woman who has stability in her identity doesn't chase acceptance. She doesn't need to be liked by everyone because she's already accepted herself. Before, she doesn't compromise her values just to fit in because her values are not negotiable. She has built her life on a clear understanding of who she is, what she stands for, and where she is going. And when you have that level of stability, rejection doesn't shake you, failure doesn't define you, and success doesn't inflate you. You stay centered no matter what. Stability and identity is not about perfection, it's about consistency. Before, it's about being so rooted in your truth that no one can easily sway you. Think of a tree with deep roots. The wind may blow, storms may come, but the tree doesn't fall because it is anchored deep into the ground. That's what identity does for you. It roots you so deeply that even when life gets rough, you bend but never break. Without those roots, the smallest storm can knock you over. With them, you can survive even the fiercest hurricane. This kind of stability is powerful because it gives you clarity. When you know who you are, decisions become easier. You don't need to overthink every choice because your values guide you. You don't live in fear of judgment because your identity isn't up for debate. You don't waste energy trying to prove yourself because your worth is already settled. This clarity frees you to focus on your goals, your vision, and your purpose instead of constantly being distracted by outside noise. And here's the truth: stability in identity inspires others. When people see someone who doesn't bend under pressure, who doesn't change just to fit in, it makes them reflect on their own lives. It makes them ask, what do I stand for? Who am I when no one's watching? A stable identity is magnetic because in a world full of uncertainty, consistency is rare. People respect and admire those who are unshaken because deep down, everyone longs for that same strength within themselves. At the end of the day, stability and identity is about freedom. When you no longer need the world to tell you who you are, you become untouchable. You're free to walk your own path, to chase your own dreams, and to live life on your own terms. You're free from the exhausting need to perform for others. And most importantly, you're free to stand tall, knowing that no matter what changes around you, one thing will always remain the same: your unshakable identity. Pressure is something everyone faces. It comes in different forms: expectations from family, deadlines at work, the judgment of society. Or even the quiet voice in your own head that keeps asking, am I enough? For most people, pressure feels like a heavy weight that pushes them down, leaving them drained, fearful, or even paralyzed. But there is another way to see it. Pressure doesn't have to break you. It can build you. The difference is in how you choose to respond. You can either let pressure crush you, or you can turn pressure into power. Think about how diamonds are made. They're created under immense pressure, conditions that would destroy weaker materials. Yet, instead of being crushed, they are transformed into something rare, and beautiful and unbreakable. The same principle applies to life. Pressure can either expose weakness or reveal strength. The woman who is unshaken by opinions understands this. When the world tries to box her in, when people question her choices, when the weight of expectation feels unbearable, she doesn't collapse. She grows sharper, tougher, and more resilient. Pressure has a way of revealing what's inside. If you let it, it can awaken strength you never knew you had. When others criticize you, instead of shrinking, you can use their words as fuel. When circumstances feel overwhelming, you can remind yourself that every challenge is shaping you into someone stronger. Pressure is not the enemy, it is the sculptor carving out the parts of you that don't belong and refining the parts that make you extraordinary. Of course, the easy road is to avoid pressure, to step back, play small, and live safely in the shadows. But safety never creates growth. Comfort zones never produce greatness. Every breakthrough, every accomplishment, every success story is born out of pressure. That woman who stands firm in the face of it understands that discomfort is a sign of progress. She knows that each struggle is shaping her, each hardship is molding her, and each season of difficulty is preparing her for what's ahead. Turning pressure into power is a mindset. It's choosing to reframe obstacles as opportunities. It's deciding that instead of asking, why me, you ask, what can I learn from this? How can this make me stronger? It's understanding that the struggle you're facing today might be the very thing that equips you to handle bigger challenges tomorrow. Pressure, when embraced, builds capacity. The more you endure, the more you can carry. The more you can carry, the further you can go. A woman who turns pressure into power doesn't deny that life can be hard. She feels the weight, she acknowledges the struggle, but she doesn't surrender to it. She channels it, she converts frustration into focus, fear into determination, and doubt into fuel. Where others see obstacles, she sees training grounds. Where others feel crushed, she feels sharpened. And that shift in perspective is what separates her from the rest. The truth is, the world will never stop applying pressure. People will always have opinions. Life will always present challenges. The question is not whether you will face pressure, but what you will do with it. Will you allow it to weaken you or will you allow it to turn you into someone stronger, more resilient, and more powerful than before? When you turn pressure into power, nothing can stop you. You no longer run from difficulty, you welcome it, knowing it's a sign you're on the path to growth. And when others look at you, they won't just see a woman who survived pressure. They will see a woman who was transformed by it, a woman who rose higher because of it, and a woman whose strength was built not in the absence of struggle, but in the very heart of it. That is the power of turning pressure into power. Every person faces a simple but powerful moment every single day. The moment they look in the mirror, the reflection staring back is more than just a face, it's the truth you can't escape. The mirror test is this: when you see yourself, do you feel proud of the person you are becoming? Or do you feel like you've betrayed yourself? It is not about what others think, not about the applause of the crowd or the criticism of strangers. It's about whether you can look at yourself without regret, without shame, and without wishing you were someone else. Because at the end of the day, the only opinion that matters is the one staring back at you from that glass. Too many people live their lives chasing approval from the outside world while neglecting the voice inside. They twist themselves into versions of who others want them to be, thinking that if they just gain acceptance, they'll feel fulfilled. But when they are finally alone, when the noise of the world quiets and they are left with their own reflection, the truth comes crashing down. They realize that no matter how much external validation they've gathered, it means nothing if they themselves are disappointed in who they have become. That is the brutal honesty of the mirror test. The woman unshaken by opinions passes this test every day, not because she is perfect, but because she is authentic. 4. She doesn't try to hide behind masks to fit in. She doesn't dilute her ambition or dim her light to avoid judgment. Before, she chooses to live in alignment with her values, and as a result, she can meet her own eyes with confidence. The mirror test isn't about having everything figured out. It's about knowing that you are living your truth and refusing to betray yourself for the sake of others. When you look in the mirror, it's not about the clothes, before the makeup or the image. It's about the deeper question, am I living a life that feels true to me? Am I building something I can be proud of for? Or am I just performing for the crowd? Because the crowd is fickle. They cheer one moment and turn their backs the next. If you let them decide your path, you'll end up in places you never wanted to be, doing things that never aligned with your heart. And then the mirror will reflect a stranger. Before, the mirror test forces accountability. You can lie to the world. You can pretend to be someone else. You can post the highlight reel but when it's just you and your reflection, there is no filter. You see the truth of your choices, your compromises, and your courage or lack of it. That's why the most unshakable people don't seek peace in opinions. They seek peace in their own reflection. 4. They know that if they can look at themselves with honesty and respect, no external judgment can truly harm them. A woman who passes the mirror test every day becomes unstoppable. She doesn't wait for validation because she already carries it within. 4. She doesn't fear rejection because she has already accepted herself. She doesn't bend to criticism because she knows that the only voice that has the final say is her own. 4. And that strength makes her immune to the shifting winds of public opinion. So when the world tries to measure her worth, when people project their doubts, when the noise of opinions grows loud, she simply returns to the mirror. And there, in that silent moment, she finds her answer. She sees her strength. 4. Her authenticity, her unbreakable resolve. That is the test that matters most. Not what the world thinks of her. 4. But what she knows to be true when she looks at herself. Pass that test and you become unshakable.